Good afternoon, and welcome to the School of Labor and Employment Relations. If you don't know me, I'm Ingrid Fulmer, and I'm the Dean of the school. As a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign has a responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which it exists. In order to remind ourselves and our community, we will begin this event by acknowledging that we are currently on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Way, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwati, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. We are proud to acknowledge these native nations and to work with them as we move forward as an institution into the future, a vibrant community inclusive of all of our differences. I am super thrilled to be here today and to welcome you to this special occasion as we recognize one of our most foremost professors and scholars, Professor Dan Newman, and as we also remember one of the pillars of this institution, Professor Martin Wagner. Martin's tireless work in the field of labor and management relations is one of the reasons our school enjoys the great success that you see today. I'd like to first welcome Professor Newman, our honoree. He's here with his parents and the rest of his family, so welcome to you all too, right here in the front. Let's also take a moment to acknowledge our alumni and our prior school leadership, also in the front here, including Dean Emeritus Fritz Drasgow, who ensured that we could have this event today, that we can honor Martin's legacy through this professorship. Their generosity has also, of course, allowed us to have this outstanding opportunity to honor scholars like Dan. And so I'd like to say just a few words about why this professorship is so important to the school. As you may know, named professorships allow the school to recruit and retain, very important, outstanding senior scholars. Faculty members with records like Dan's are, of course, very attractive in the labor market, as we say, and desired by other universities, but we want them to remain here in LAR, and that is despite the weather and all of that, right? And we know that while enrollments around the university have grown, our tenure-track faculty have not increased, so it's ever more important that we maintain those good tenure faculty that we have. Honors like this allow us to help retain those faculty to ensure that we continue to produce the top quality research that we're known for and really serve our students in the very best way with the best instruction possible. So here at LER, I'm proud to say that even though we're very small, we have now this is the fourth named professorship, which is really pretty incredible given our size. And I'm going to give you a minute to applaud this in a second, but I just want to brag about this. So until 2022, we only had one. Now we're up to 4. And this is due to the generosity of our alumni as well as the foresight of our leadership that we continue to grow these gifts. And just so I can mention this to you, besides the Wagner Professorship that we'll confer today, we have the LER Alumni Professorship, currently held by Professor Michael Leroy, who's also here on the front row. We also have the Reuben G. Soderstrom International Labor Professorship, awarded 1 year ago to Professor Ryan Lamar over there. Last December, I was also honored with the inaugural Milton and Zelda Derber Professorship, which is here marked for the Dean of the school. You'll notice by the names of those professorships that they honor the history of our school, from the labor leader who helped start the institute, to our early leaders, to our more recent alumni who continue to showcase our brand and make us proud in the world. These generous gifts and our collaborative culture are helping us make LER a top school of choice for the top academic talent and all the great and wonderful students that we have around us. So I want to thank you to all of our alumni, friends of the school, and leadership who have made these gifts possible. Now we can applause. We're so fortunate. Today specifically, we're honoring 2 of our best. So the professorship itself honors Martin Wagner. Martin is known as a pioneer in the evolution of labor management relations and was a scholar and a leader at this school for over 25 years. In the words of the late Walt Franke, another pillar of our school, Martin, quote, began his career in the 30s when the nation's labor management environment was volatile and even hostile. He taught people to take an even-handed approach, to deal with reason as much as possible, and to find areas of agreement. Martin joined the school in 1958 as director of the then Institute of Labor and Industrial Relations, or Institute, as people from that era remember it, and began, importantly, one of the nation's first doctoral programs in industrial relations right here in 1966. This doctoral program is still strong today, producing great scholars and showcasing Martin's interest in employment research and academic achievement. He stepped down as director of the Institute in 1968, staying on as professor until his retirement in 1982. Today, we use this professorship to honor, as its first recipient, Professor Dan Newman. So for those of us, and most people in this room, I assume, of course, know Dan, his record really speaks for itself, but of course I'm going to say something about it anyway. His research expertise is in industrial organizational psychology, human resources, and organizational behavior. In that research, he focuses on a number of specific areas and topics, including racial equality in hiring, emotional intelligence, leadership and gender, and work engagement. He's also an expert on research methods, as many of our PhD students know well. Those who know Dan's scholarly work, both those of us in this room and those elsewhere, recognize and appreciate that breadth and also the high quality of that research, as evidenced by his many publications in the best journals in our field. It's really an outstanding achievement and very difficult to accomplish, but he has done this. His work has also influenced other people's research, as evidenced by the fact that his published papers have been cited nearly 13,000 times in papers of other people. So other people are reading it, citing it, and following his work, which is a testimony to the quality of it. In addition, I think it's also important to note Dan's impact and influence extends beyond his own research through his mentorship of graduate students, which is something we sort of know about him and maybe take for granted, but he's actually nationally and internationally known for this. In fact, one of his senior peers in the field noted, and I'll quote this, that Dan is setting the stage for the future of the field through his contributions to the training of doctoral students. He's published numerous top-tier articles with master's and doctoral students over the years, has chaired and served on the committees of numerous dissertation committees, master's thesis committees, just a remarkable number. And this is a huge investment and a real commitment to students. And his investment in doing this and guiding these students has helped them, in turn, launch their own successful careers at some of the top universities in the country, and they're beginning to make that impact in their own space, right? So this is really impressive. I'm proud to be able to share this with you. And of course, he's received numerous other academic awards for his research, has served the school in countless ways, in a number of service activities and roles. Both our school and I should say, mention also the Department of Psychology, where we're fortunate to share Dan in that way. It's really taken on what I consider, an important, valuable, impactful role as a senior member of this faculty, for which I am deeply grateful, and I thank you. So in short, today we're thrilled to honor Dan's record of achievement with this award today. So I'm now honored to have someone else come in and kind of speak about this, to represent the Provost's office. I'm honored to introduce our delegate, Ami Sanchez, who is the Acting Executive Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, and it's a real honor to have her here with us today to give remarks on behalf of the Provost's office. Ami?
Yeah. Thank you, Dean Culver. Hi, Fritz. So I am honored to be here today representing the Office of the Provost as we recognize and celebrate our colleague Dan Newman and his investiture as the inaugural Martin Wagner Professor in the School of Labor and Employment Relations. Investitures truly are a celebration and an important part of our intellectual community. They offer us a moment to acknowledge the accomplishments of our colleagues, to celebrate their contributions, and simply to say, thank you. Thank you for making our institution a better place. So a named professorship is one of the most significant milestones in the career of a faculty member. Dan's long list of accomplishments are as a scholar and as an educator, as a teacher, as a mentor, is evidence that he has earned not only this recognition, but also deserves our expressions of thanks and gratitude. So when we gather to celebrate an investiture, it is also a reminder for us as an academic community of our shared purpose and value and vision. As a land-grant institution, Illinois has a responsibility to serve the community, the state, the nation, and the world. As faculty members, that means we have a special responsibility to engage in scholarship that addresses important societal issues and teach students from all walks of life to equip them with the knowledge, skills, and vision to become leaders in their communities and beyond. So we've already heard Dan as a preeminent scholar, mentor, teacher, and so I'm not gonna repeat all of that, but I do wanna say that over the last 3 years, I have had the pleasure of working with Dan on the campus promotion and tenure committee, which bears the responsibility of ensuring that our university continues to thrive and maintain its excellence of scholarship among its faculty members. The effort and time that Dan and his fellow committee members spend to review over 100 30-plus page dossiers to review, discuss all of those each spring semester, so we're in the thick of it right now, cannot be overstated. So Dan, you helped define what it means to be quintessential faculty at Illinois. I want to take a moment today as well to express our appreciation for those who make these named faculty appointments possible. These distinguished professorships, as Ingrid had mentioned, recognize the transformational role faculty members play in our larger society. Today we're grateful that LER and its devoted alumni chose to honor Professor Martin Wagner's legacy with this professorship and to partner with and support the university in its mission. I want to say to Dan's family and his parents who traveled here and to Champaign for this important occasion, and to your kids, I want you to know just how fortunate we are to have Dan as our colleague. So thank you, Dan, for making Illinois your home. Congratulations again, and we look forward to what you do next as the inaugural Martin Wagner Professor.
You know, I guess what I wanted to say is, for my part, she's doing actual presenting, that we're really proud to have you as a part of our family here, and look forward to many, many more years with you up with us. So thank you.
Thank you. Please get comfortable, because today I'm giving 2 short talks. If you would like to leave or go to the bathroom in the middle, I won't be offended, okay, because I'm going to talk for a little while. One of the talks is about Martin Wagner himself, and the second one is about myself and my experience that led me to where I am now at LER. Before I start, though, I want to acknowledge the secret to my success. That was that. Grad students. If I ever complete any successful research or impactful research, or if I say something that sounds smart or clever, chances are that somehow graduate students were responsible for that. Every grad student has a great work inside of them, and it's my job to get that out. So I think of myself as a kind of a coach. So these are pictures of grad students with whom I've collaborated while they on research while they were in grad school. They now work at research-intensive universities and tenure-track jobs. About half of them I chaired their dissertations. Half of them credit goes to Fritz and the rest of them. Fortunately, several of my current grad students are in the room today. So if you could please raise your hand and just stand up. Fritz today, it's grad students, all right? Okay, back to Wagner. So I want to officially begin by thanking the anonymous alumni donors and friends whose generosity made today's events possible, and in honor of Martin Wagner's legacy. As Ingrid mentioned, Martin Wagner was a former director of the Institute of Labor and Industrial Relations from 1958 to 1968. Wagner was born in 1911, so he was already 95 years old in 2007, the first time I set foot on the University of Illinois campus. So we come from very different eras. Although it's usually difficult to try to speak with any kind of detail about someone you've never met, Martin has made that part easy for me because his legacy is immense. By all accounts, Wagner helped to set the culture of IR, now called LER. He was a founding member of LERA, as Ingrid mentioned, which is the Professional Association of Labor Relations. It's now headquartered here in this building. He served as the chairman of the Illinois Labor Relations Board. He was the chair of the search committee that hired University President Stan Eikenberry, who some people would say was the most influential president in recent era. And he personally convinced Eikenberry to come to Illinois. Speaking of hiring, important to me directly, Wagner was the director of the Institute who helped to hire Chuck Hewlin and Harry Triandis, scholars whose research changed the field of HR and whose mere presence on campus helped to recruit many other faculty and graduate students over the years. Hewlin, in turn, was heavily involved in hiring Fritz Drasko. Drasko hired many other people, including me. Wagner also founded the PhD program. Let that sink in. So depending on how you want to play the counterfactual game, many of us might not be here if Wagner had done his job differently. Also, as Michael Leroy told me, in the early 1980s, Wagner spearheaded efforts to legislate collective bargaining rights for kindergarten through 12 teachers through the Illinois Educational Labor Relations Act. This resulted in improvements in living standards for hundreds of thousands of educators from the 1980s through the present, and that impact on the state of Illinois cannot be overstated. Finally, Martin generously donated a bunch of money to renovate the downstairs classrooms in this building, which brought this building into the 21st century. And that's consistent with sort of the generous spirit that he had. And so a couple more things. In preparation for this, I was able to secure a video of Martin Wagner's memorial service, and it took me 2 hours to find a DVD player. But I'll look it up. And so I have some intel on additional personal stuff about Martin. So as a person, Martin Wagner was the son of a shoemaker from Budapest, Hungary, from an immigrant family with socialist leanings who settled in Kentucky. His parents instilled a particular set of values, and Martin believed that finding a set of values to guide the right way to live is infinitely more important than how much you earn or what kind of job you have. And the 3 core values that Martin's son recounted at his memorial service in 2009 were: 1, strive for perfection in whatever work you do. The quality of your work is a reflection of your integrity. Follow the dictum, mach's gut, or do it well. His father, the shoemaker who moved to Kentucky, shipped custom shoes throughout the world. He worked days and nights to perfect each pair of shoes. And as a craftsman, he was able to detect how good his work was in ways that the customers could not detect. And yet he still wanted to make sure that he did his best work, even when the customer wouldn't know. Martin similarly had a disdain for anything second-rate that was less than your best effort. Number 2, live your life with love and generosity for others. When Martin was growing up, his mother would recite this paraphrased rhyme: only one life that soon is past, only what's done with love will last. The most important things were not the accomplishments on his CV, but his generosity, his enthusiasm, and his respect for others. Number 3, your actions toward others should reveal your commitment to character. Educators have a particularly high calling and should be people of character. Formal education should have a moral anchor. Teachers should understand that they have a profound impact on the students to become better human beings. Chuck Hewlin, I spoke to, he also knew Martin, many people here did, said Wagner was one of the nicest guys you'd ever know, and that he intimately understood labor relations from a practical perspective. Michael Leroy noted, Martin had a booming and authoritative voice. I don't know if anyone here wants to do an impression. Do you dare? No? I'd be curious, okay. But that authoritative voice was backed up by a keen intellect. His leadership was strong, but leavened with uncanny listening skills. Bob Lydon, who graduated in 1977, sent me an email and said, I had the great fortune of being able to take Wagner's labor arbitration course as a master's student. His wealth of experience and knowledge, not to mention his warm and caring personality and generosity, were most impressive. He was such an esteemed person. Apparently, if you took a class from Martin Wagner, you had better prepare. Wagner's classes were no holds barred, and he would cold call on students and volunteer you to speak. Beyond the classroom, Martin was always available in the coffee lounge or in his office, and it was rumored that he liked to read. Sound familiar? That he maybe read up to 16 hours a day on many days, reading late into the nights. All right, in terms of his personality traits, people said that Martin Wagner exuded strength, formality, and properness, but mixed with warmth, humor, and optimism. Martin was filled with compassion and caring toward his family, toward his friends, toward his students, toward his colleagues, and was a pillar on which everybody leaned. Martin was also self-deprecating. He would often credit his successes to others or to good fortune, making sort of external attributions, but indeed he had many successes to make attributions for. As his professional career was taking off, the Michigan Daily newspaper in Ann Arbor wrote an article about him that was headlined, Dishwasher Becomes Rhodes Scholar. Aside from being a proud Rhodes Scholar and a world-class labor arbitrator, Wagner was also an Urbana guy. He lived at 1506 South Orchard for 50 years. He had his own table at Milo's. He had an intense love of opera music, wine, and food. His vacation spot was Pentwater, Michigan. And he really was into the history of the United States Supreme Court. So he liked labor law, constitutional law. He had read every biography and autobiography of Supreme Court justices, and he liked to quote them, especially their more cutting comments. He knew a lot about wine and food, including restaurants, not here, like in San Francisco. Which specific items you should order from the menu, and which wine you should pair with it. For years, he attended the Lyric Opera of Chicago. He had a routine of driving up, eating a cup of soup in the Chinese restaurant before the matinee, and then afterward, he would go to Santorini's for a Greek meal before driving back home. He was into opera in a kind of way that he wanted to share it, wanted you to be into it too. So he would acquire multiple recordings of the same performance, and then maybe leave them on your desk and say, please notice the difference between this performance in this part and this other performance of this same part. When he was invited to dinner parties or cocktail hours, he would never arrive empty-handed. Indeed, he was known for showing up with both of his hands full, with wine, flowers, or treats that he got from a local shop. One of his friends told the story that Martin liked to show up with a box of chocolates from a local shop called Reuben's. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Must be before my time. And that the friend did not prefer the nut-filled or fruit-filled chocolates, so Martin went in there and convinced the chocolatier to make them without nuts or fruit in them, so he could give the kind that his friend specifically wanted. And finally, this is the last part. When I was doing my research on Martin Wagner, one of the things that really stuck out to me was this story that was recounted by a close family member, that when Martin began dating his wife of 59 years, Nell Nordstrom Wagner, he fended off her other suitors, who included President Gerald Ford and entertainer Burl Ives. Now I have to confess, when I heard that, it made me wonder, Martin, how'd you do that? But But this mystery was solved when I watched the memorial service because his friends and his family repeatedly described his most defining feature, which was that he was a fantastic listener. His daughter recounted that he really listened to what other people were saying. He was a dream of a man. He looked straight at you and listened, with a twinkle in his eye, like you were really being heard. He was equally comfortable defending either side of an argument, because he had the ability to really hear everyone, and he approached conflict in a balanced way. He was truly a gifted arbitrator. You could always trust him to listen to what you had to say and to come to a fair judgment, even if he was judging against you. As additional evidence of this gift, some of Wagner's professional colleagues told of arbitration cases like the Milwaukee police dispute and others, where Martin came in as an arbitrator, and afterward, both parties thought they had won. That is truly remarkable. All right, now to spend some time talking about Martin. I want to switch to talk about the important role of the School of Labor and Employment Relations and the role that the school has played in my own field, human resources and industrial psychology, as well as talk a little bit about my own academic journey. So to begin with, this is what LER has looked like for the past couple of years after the upgrade, but the building used to look different. So I want to start off by taking a moment to explain why working at LER at the University of Illinois is the best job in America. And the reason why is kind of a secret. It's the staff. In addition to our own new dean, Ingrid Fulmer, we have an extremely experienced and competent staff who in many regards are the ones who run the place. First, Becky Barker. Becky does several different jobs around here, including managing and recruiting, admissions, academic advising for the Masters in HR, keeping the PhD program running, and various other things. I don't think I can list them. But anecdotally, when I teach statistics, Becky asks me if I can give her information about any students who might have had a hard time on the first exam or might be having difficulty. And at Illinois, we're not a school where if a student fails an exam, we say, sucks to be you, you should have tried harder, you should have studied. That's not us. Instead, Becky truly cares about every single student and provides the kind of guidance and checks in on students who are in trouble, shepherding them through the program and getting successful outcomes for many people who otherwise would not have gotten that. So that's special. Nell Madigan, Associate Dean for Career Services, serves a critical role in maintaining relationships with our many companies who recruit here. Thanks in part to Nell's efforts, we still have over 90% placement rates for graduates of the master's program in HR and industrial relations. And Nell also helps to socialize and orient and set the professional tone for our students. Lynn Hovland, the dean's admin, she, among her many responsibilities, also which I cannot list, she quickly and flawlessly schedules committee meetings and job visits in a manner that greatly accelerates our ability to make high-quality decisions and helps us compete with other institutions who might want to hire the same people. So we actually have a competitive advantage because of the efficiency with which Lynn works. Wyatt Martin and Corey Hatfield, the unsung heroes who manage the budget and development and alumni relations, respectively. Corey's work specifically helps make possible things like named professorships in school. Eden Haycraft, who's the engine behind our main growth center, the online master's program. Brooke here. Okay, okay. And if you're not on the slide, put your photo on the website. All right. Next, we have people who teach the classes and write the papers. The faculty at LER who are remarkable in a variety of ways. First thing about LER faculty is we care a lot about teaching. We routinely have close to 2/3 of our faculty appear on the campus list of teachers ranked as excellent by their students. We prioritize taking care of the students here. Second, we like each other more than we have to. We're a complex interdisciplinary unit, and obviously we don't agree on everything, but we do extend positive regard to each other. We attempt to communicate clearly, even when we have differences, and we want to understand each other's perspectives and to optimize in ways that advance the long-term agenda of the school as a unit that represents diverse disciplines. Ingrid Fulmer, our new dean, has also exhibited tremendous skill so far in balancing numerous agendas of a varied set of internal and external stakeholders. Great job so far. Third, and this is something we don't talk about a lot, but the current faculty represent the future of LER, but one part of that future is carrying the torch that's been handed to them by past LER faculty. The reputation of the School of Labor and Employment Relations at Illinois as a world-class research university has a rich history. You knew I was going to show you data. So I knew about LER at Illinois years before I ever got here, because this is a place where they wrote the stone tablets of HR and industrial psychology. In particular with regard to personality and individual differences, measurement and methods, leadership, employee satisfaction, job attitudes, cognition, withdrawal, teams, groups, and culture. I compiled some data from current and former LER faculty, made up a label for it, but they're displayed on this figure. Basically what we're looking at is something I would call the Faculty Research Hall of Fame. This is a list of current and former LER faculty showing faculty members whose research output has been cited over 10,000 times. Now on this one narrow metric, and people who understand construct validity, construct validation, construct efficiency, they'll be quick to point out that merely looking at someone's number of citations does not come close to telling you the whole story about their research contributions. But nonetheless, it's one thing. And this particular metric, on this metric, all these individuals are in the top 1 to 2% of their fields. Most well-performing tenured faculty, who are very legitimate, are around here. I'm going to read the names. Bruce Aguilera, Peter Capelli, Peter Carnival, Fritz Drasko, Jerry Ferris, George Gray, Charles Hewlin, Parna Joshi, Wee Liao, Joe Martaccio, Greg Olin, Simon Restabog, Deborah Rupp, and Harry Triandis. Further, of the ones who were hired within the past 30 years, almost all of them were women. Many of these people are my heroes. Most of them were luminaries in the field of HR. These are people who, if I had not known their work when I was in grad school, it would have put me in very real danger of failing my comprehensive exams. The point that I'm trying to make is that it's difficult to name any institution in the entire history of HR and OP and industrial psychology that can boast a list of former faculty like this one. And the argument gets stronger, doesn't it? If you include adjacent departments like psychology and OB, you'll see other superstars, lots of them. I'm going to read the names. David Badescu, Cattell, Corley, Diener, Dweck, Fiedler, Fishbein, Fraley, Humphreys, McDonald, McGrath, Northcraft, Pfeffer, Pratt, Robbins, Brown, Slancet, Tucker, Wiggins, White, and indeed, it's not, oh, some of these people are in this room today. For those of you who go into this field who might be like 10 years old right now, you'll be able to say, one time I was in a room with all right, so what we can see here is a long list of superstars who together made a vast contribution toward creating the modern field of HR. It's probably unparalleled by any other institution. And one additional observation, looking at the LER Faculty Research Hall of Fame, by my count, 8 of them ended up leaving Illinois, 5 of them stayed until retirement. And the larger point is, here at Illinois, we hire the very best. And my primary objective in showing this information is to comment on the illustrious history of scholarship, and that today I stand in the shadows of all these people who deserve recognition too. Also, Chuck with the big fish. At this point, I want to thank my family for coming here to help me celebrate this day. Whenever an academic makes a major milestone accomplishment, like tenure or promotion, it can quite typically be thought of as a whole family achievement. That is, everybody had to work hard and everybody had to make sacrifices. No, you did. So everyone deserves to share in taking pride in the accomplishment. This is your achievement too. The single individual who deserves the most credit, lest we share too much, is the one who shares the biggest stake in this is my wife, Crystal. Although a lot of good things have eventually happened to me in life, the best one by far was having the great fortune to meet Crystal. Besides being a fun person to hang out with and having the sort of strong moral character and generosity that Martin Wagner could respect, additionally, she corrects me and she tolerates me. I think it's fair to say that I've been comically preoccupied with the minutiae of my job for all 20 years we've been married. All those words correct? Yeah. Oh, and we've dated. Okay, so 22.8 years. Crystal tolerated this. Beyond tolerating this, in the early years, when I would get paralyzed by daunting tasks and seemingly impossible projects, Crystal would be really good at telling me to snap out of it. She also once jumped in and coded a whole bunch of data for me, enabling me to make a difficult R&R deadline. She was thanked in the author note, but not otherwise remunerated. And that paper ended up winning a major award that helped kickstart my career. So, again, with counterfactuals, right? Where would I be? Crystal can also sometimes be an excellent person to talk to about theory because she understands people very well. She can solve many puzzles that I cannot. This skill set comes in handy in her day job as a PhD clinical psychologist. And similar to Martin Wagner, Crystal also spends many hours per day reading and reads late into the night a lot of times with the lights on. I would also like to thank my parents, Karen and Mel Newman, my in-laws, Rod and Sarah Wiggins, and my kids, Sam, Ben, and Anna, you know who you are, for being here today to help celebrate. Oh, okay. So this is the second to last slide. No, this is the last slide. So anyway, we're not quite done yet, okay? There are 11 sets of entities whom I need to thank, but they're all listed here. All right, first, my parents. I grew up in Palestine, Texas, a small town of 20,000. If you look at geographic culture maps, they would classify it as the Deep South portion of the U.S. In order to make ends meet, my dad worked 3 jobs. He was a minister at the local Lutheran church in our town, which by itself is more than a full-time job. He additionally commuted to a second parish an hour away in the early mornings, where he was also the only minister. And then he additionally drove the local school bus every weekday. My mom took care of 4 young children. I guess we weren't always young, but 4 children anyway. She could stretch a dollar better than anyone I've ever seen. And she was also an entrepreneur. She started a preschool in our church. With regard to work, my mom had a saying she often recited, which is, pray as if it all depends on God, but work as if it all depends on you. I'm not a person who works all the time, but I do think about work all the time. From 3rd grade through 7th grade, my brother and I had a daily paper route. My brother was slightly shorter than I was, a year older than I was, and he was better than I was at everything, especially video games, sports, and fighting. Back to the paper route. I recall my brother and I together made $64 per month, and that we had to give 50% off the top to our parents, and for the remaining 32%, we were automatically taxed an additional 50% for something called college savings. Then from the remaining $16, my brother and I donated 10% to church, and we could use the remainder to buy toys and clothes. My parents were always saving for our college, and by forcing us to save also, along with them, 50% of our earnings, they were sending a strong message about how important college was, although it seemed really preposterous to me at the time. My parents also emphasized the values of honesty, service, and citizenship, and one thing about my parents is they really have, as long as I've known them, always tried to live by the golden rule, which is treating others as they would like to be treated.
Can I say something about that 50%?
Go ahead, Mom.
We did the Sunday morning early route, thank you very much, and also the club key.
That Well, I was a child. In third grade.
Sorry.
That's why you're here. All right. The third set of entities, Mary Jane Patterson and John Margrave. Raise your hand if you've heard of Mary Jane Patterson and John Margrave. No, you haven't. Not that Mary Jane Ben.
I'm not going to argue with you. Your mom's going to take me down.
Mary Jane was a grad student for whom I did research in chemistry as an undergrad at Rice University, a grad student. I spent my first 7 semesters at Rice as a chemistry major, and that, for me, I ended up spending 2 full years as a researcher on diamond synthesis. So this is a picture of a vacuum chamber, which is a way of, it's actually a really cool way of using a process called chemical vapor deposition to turn methane into diamond thin films. But the thing that I learned that is useful to this day is that if you want to make diamond, this is about how research works. If you want to make diamond, even trace amounts of diamond for proof of concept, you have to be willing to spend an entire summer of your life fixing a broken vacuum pump. That's it. All right, Vicky Quinones, Sylvia Heisong, and Bob Du Bois. Vicky Quinones taught me regression for the first time. Sylvia Heisong was the grad student of Bob Du Bois, and Sylvia taught me factor analysis. Need I say more? My methods teachers at Penn State, all right, this is a little bit involved, but after I was an undergrad, I spent a year as a high school science teacher at a private school that specialized in teaching kids with attention deficit disorder, which greatly contributed to my eventual teaching style. So I tried various techniques to hold people's attention. After 1 year, I decided to go back to grad school. And the main reason for going to grad school, if I'm being candid, was that for a guy like me, it's much easier to find somebody to date and potentially marry in a university setting. So I went back to school. Now, in a cool twist of fate, when I graduated from Penn State, when I went to Penn State, it was one of the worst possible times because even though I did my homework and when I was choosing a grad program, I noted that Penn State was ranked #2 as the most research productive program in the US when I applied there. That is in the industrial psychology group, and we love to rank these things. When I got to Penn State, John Matthew and Rick Jacobs left, and the other 2 senior professors went on sabbatical, so for the first 2 years of grad school, no professors in my program published any papers. This is bad because when you go to grad school, it's like a clock is ticking, and you better publish some stuff, or you're not going to get a sponsor, and you will have to do a different kind of job. All right. To make things worse, out of the 18 PhD students who entered that program before me, exactly 0 of them expressed any interest in becoming a professor. So I didn't feel like I had any role models to imitate. And to adapt to that situation, I spent the first several weeks of grad school going to the basement of the Penn State Library and reading dissertations of the illustrious alums who had graduated from there. Dave Hoffman, Paul Tesla, Kevin Murphy, Steve Kozlowski. I did not know how to do the things that they had done in their dissertations, but I did notice that they all focused on having a lot of advanced first-rate research methods. So during that time, I also tried to do research on my own without an advisor. Bad idea. I spent a lot of hours in the library photocopying hundreds of articles, paying 10 cents per page. There were no PDFs. Articles were not available online in 1998-99. The custodians in my building complained to the professors that a strange dude was sleeping in the grad student office, and I was just trying to have more hours so I could make progress on my research. I started a dozen papers during those 2 years. None of them ever got published. I learned just how essential it is to have a good mentor in grad school who will help you know what kinds of ideas are likely to work and how to write them up. Without a mentor, it's almost impossible to publish papers. Also, another adaptation I did in the first 3 years of grad school, but not as much was going on in the industrial psychology program. I took 2/3 of the PhD curriculum from the business school at Penn State. I also took 10 PhD seminars in statistics and research methods, mostly from the Penn State Methodology Center. My teachers were John Graham, Mike Rovine, Linda Collins, Kevin Murphy, Don Bird, Tom Morkenweg, Toby Morkoff, Martin Killiff, and David Harrison. The best and third best methods classes I took were from Dave Harrison and Tom Morkenweg, not surprisingly both Illinois grads. Many of the classes focused on topics that were invented or innovated by Illinois scholars, specifically Cronbach, Tallenhorn, Tucker, McCallum, McDonald, Humphreys, Trasco, Badescu, Hubert, Wasserman, Anderson, and Contractor. Whenever I took a class, I took it very seriously. That is, I took a class like I was gonna have to teach it. Next, Dave Harrison. He gets 2 asterisks because of something he did for me. So finally, in my 4th year of grad school, something important happened that shaped what made all the difference. Dave Harrison, who was an Illinois grad, moved to Penn State to the business school, and he did not bring any grad students with him. So that meant he was open to working with the industrial psychology PhD students. And by my 4th year of having taken a bunch of stats and methods classes, I was ready to be a fantastic graduate student mentee, and so that's what I did. We met in Dave's office once a week for a year. He would give me homework assignments to complete, write a page about this, collect some data about that, figure out how to do this analysis. The papers he had me reading were written by Chuck Hewlin, Joe Martaccio, Kathy Hanisch, Tim Judge, Joe Rosé, Fishbein and Eisen, all Illinois people. It took 4 years for that paper to eventually get accepted in a journal, but I learned the most important things from that process. 1, how to craft a contribution. 2, how to respond to journal editors and reviewers. 3, the fact that with any paper, one individual person ultimately has to hunker down and dump in an extra 1,000 hours of work to make it eventually get published. That's true, right? From this experience, I started to try to become the kind of mentor who could help my own PhD students to publish their own papers in the top journals. All right, next, Rod and Sarah Wiggins. These are my wife's parents. Although I cannot say exactly why this is true, Rod Wiggins was extremely instrumental in enabling me to finish my dissertation in 2004, less than 1 month before I had to graduate in order to take a new job at the University of Maryland. I can't say why he was influential. They are also very nice people to hang out with. And Grandma is a pinch hitter for everything I need. So if a car breaks down or really anything, she's really a second me. But good at stuff. All right, next, Paul Hanges. Paul Hanges, Jim Oots, and Michelle Gelfand. All right, so when I first left Penn State, I was a trailing spouse. I took a visiting professorship at Alliant International University in Los Angeles. This may be a little too much biography, right? But I used this time to prep 3 different PhD courses in stats and research methods, for which I was awarded Faculty Member of the Year honors by the PhD students. So instead of being like, I'm teaching at this school, I took it seriously and did my best, Wagner style. My style was to hold students accountable for reading and by administering 10-question multiple choice quizzes at the start of every class. And then instead of letting people just talk to each other about their feelings, I lectured them for 3 hours. And then I made us do a bunch of lab assignments and projects, so with a lot of evaluation. I was invited to serve on over 2 dozen dissertation committees at that time because of my combination of methods knowledge and the methods person for committees, but also my coaching and encouraging style of mentoring and my high standards, because people knew if I was on their committee, their dissertation project would be good and they would get their money's worth out of the experience. In another twist of fate, at the University of Maryland, Ben Schneider and Catherine, if you're an industrial psychologist, you know these names. If you're not, very sorry. At the University of Maryland, Ben Schneider retired about the same time that Catherine Klein moved to Wharton, and so that left that program with a need for someone who could teach PhD seminars and mentor PhD students. They were only approved to hire a visiting assistant prof, and I applied for that job and got it. They mentioned after the interview that they were very impressed with how well I seemed to understand the sorts of issues that a PhD program faces in the aftermath of faculty turnover, which is something I obviously knew a lot about firsthand from Penn State. Next, okay, right, so I got to Maryland. This is the Adverse Impact Research Group for Maryland. It's got a lot of big name people in it, like Dave Mayer from Michigan, Lisa Leslie from NYU, Jim Oots, Julie Lyon from Google. One of those is me, I don't know which one. the red shirt. I'll skip over the details of it, but basically, the book for the Science Frontier series that Jim Oots was editing involved writing a summary review chapter, and he asked me to write it with him. And so I did, and that sort of articulated the next 14 years of work on the most successful substantive area of research that my students and I have been doing since then. And indeed, it's basically research on adverse impact, which follows the post-affirmative action paradigm articulated by Paul Sackett and Neil Schmidt in 2001. It develops ways to improve the diversity of new hires by making hiring rates more equal between different racial groups, but without considering individual applicants' races during the hiring process itself. So briefly, the techniques entail diversity recruiting and applicant attraction, which includes understanding race differences on vocational interests, and also predictor weighting schemes that are based on the Pareto optimal trade-off approach. This is very prescriptive diversity research in that it's not about building theory per se, it's about developing decision-making tools that can be improved, that can be used to improve the diversity of your organization tomorrow. They are immediately used. Also, while in Maryland, my son Sam was born, and I had to make a choice about whether to stay at Maryland in the postdoc or move to Texas A&M for a tenure track job. So I took the tenure track job, which was a chance to return home to Texas and buy a big house for my kids to run around in. All right, next, and very close to the end now, Fritz and Chuck. 3 years later, after meeting Texas A&M, I got the opportunity to move to Illinois, and because of the tremendous historical influence that Illinois has had on my field, we call the Faculty Research Hall of Fame, and because of that, I felt like I couldn't say no to Illinois. I knew that moving to Illinois would mean that I was likely to become a household name in industrial psychology. Illinois. I have this ongoing joke with Chuck. When I introduce him to strangers, I say one of two things. I either say, "This is my dad," I'm not his dad. Or I say, "He's the third most famous industrial psychologist." And he says, "Famous industrial psychologist is not anymore." Anyway, but within that, if you're in industrial psychology, it's important to you. So Illinois is the big time. As evidence of this, note that Fritz and Chuck don't have last names. Everyone in my field just knows who Fritz and Chuck are. All right, so I've spent the past 15 years in Illinois working around Fritz and Chuck. That's how I really became who I am now. I owe them a ton. To be clear, I don't mean to imply that Fritz or Chuck, especially Chuck, agrees with anything that I ever say, or vice versa, Chuck. But I do mean to signal that their influence has helped my development tremendously. And then last but not least, maybe least, not least, my friends. Depends on what friendship means to you. Especially the Beck Drakes, the Fraleys, Christy Guerras, the Hankins, as well as my lunch buddies, Ben Hankin, Glenn Royceman, and Chris Fraley. And then finally, my audit teachers. Does anyone know what an audit teacher is? All right, so another good thing about being in the big time in Illinois is you can ask people to sit in on their classes, and they might say yes. So I basically got a second free PhD. I took small groups from Pat Laughlin, I took measurement and industry from Fritz Drasko, I took personality and behavior from Brett Roberts, attitudes from Dolores Alvarez, attachment theory from Chris Fraley, social networks from Jana Diesner, Texas A&M, strategic management from Michael Hitt, personnel selection from Winfred Arthur, systemic racism from Joe Fagan, behavioral genetics from Damien Derringer, back to Illinois, and game theory and industrial relations theory from Ryan Lamar. Ryan, I know I missed the last 2 classes. But yeah, I mean, it's like the most wonderful way to be. And lastly, grad students.
Thank you. or so. Of course, they always do a great job putting these things together, as well as organizing the dinner that's going to happen later. So if you're going to join us for that, we look forward to having more conversation with you at Big Grove Tavern in just a little bit. So that really concludes our ceremony for this afternoon, and I really appreciate you all coming, and congratulations again. It's an honor to work with you, and all these students are really lucky as well at all of you guys. Thank you. That's it for today. How about one more hymn?